Hello, this is a video in which I will talk about the next part of the lead up to the Nomonhan Incident, the Battle of Khalkin Gol in 1939. In this episode, we'll be talking about the lead up to the Battle of Changkufeng, because Changkufeng is an absolutely crucial battle on the road to the Battle of Nomonhan, and it could deserve its own like mini series on its own. It's almost like about half as important as Khalkhin Gol itself was. So that's why right now I'm going to do a smaller video talking about the lead up to Changkufeng. And then the video that I'll upload shortly after will be about the Battle of Changkufeng itself. But right now I want to focus on the lead up to Changkufeng and what were some of the events that caused Changkufeng to happen. So to start off, Changkufeng is far away from the Mongolian Manchukuo border. It's actually further southeast. It's in that little tri-point between Korea, Manchuria, and the Soviet Union, and that's where the I believe it's either the Yalu or the Tumen River. I think it's the Tumen River, which intersects with the Manchurian Soviet border, and this will be the point in which the Battle of Changkufeng would occur. So it's in this little tri-point, but in important area in between the borders of Japan and its puppet state Manchukuo and the Soviet Union. And again, just like in the Mongolian Manchukuo border, this is an area with less precise borders, and though it is more populated and more precise than the rural area of Khalkhin Gol and Nomonhan, this still does not have well-defined borders, especially in the river areas. Remember, the river is supposed to be neutral territory. Same thing as in the Battle of the Battle of the Amur River. The Amur River incident is the exact same thing. The rivers are supposed to be neutral, and any islands on the river are also neutral. And the Soviets and Japanese are both not supposed to put too many troops in that area just for peace and safety purposes. So, first the command of the two forces, well, actually the Japanese have two. So there's first the Kwantung army that we've discussed in the previous episode, which is in charge of all of Manchuria. And then there's the Chosen army, which we haven't really discussed, but that's in charge of the entire area of Korea. And keep in mind that that whole peninsula is has been a part of Japan since 1910, and in 1938, it's a Japanese colony, and it is under full military control over the Chosen army. And the Chosen army and the Kwantung army are different in their many ways, but Changkufeng is supposed to be on the Korean Russian border. So the Chosen army would actually be the one who would be directly involved, not the Kwantung army. This is outside the Kwantung army's area of command. And then the Soviet Union has they have some maritime units. They also have some NKVD units, and they have some normal rifleman infantry units. And there would be the Far Eastern Force, which is named the force in the entire area. And then inside it, there would specifically be the 40th Infantry Division assigned to this eastern area near Vladivostok, but towards the actual border area with Manchukuo and Korea. And keep in mind that the border between the Soviet Union and Korea is not very long. It's a very short border. So there's not a long area of empty space, unlike the Mongolian or Manchurian Soviet border. So some important background towards this time area, which is in the end of July 1938, is some of the things that we talked about before, like the Marco Polo Bridge incident in July 1937, exactly 1 year back. The Japanese Kwantung Army had attacked nationalist China, and that started a full-scale war against the Chinese. And since then, the Japanese had advanced into northern China. They also landed in Shanghai, and then they further advanced towards Nanking, and that's where the famous Battle of Nanking took place, and the former capital of China, that was at that time the capital of the nationalist forces. And then you had all these war crimes collectively known as the Rape of Nanking that happened in this area that actually turned a lot of public opinion from the outside world against Japan. But anyway, besides the point, after Nanking is where you get to Wuhan, and that's what's important in this context for us, because the Japanese want to attack the next Chinese capital, which had moved from Nanking to Wuhan. And Wuhan, by the way, at this point was not actually one city. It was divided into 3 different towns: Wuchang, Hanyang, and um, Wuchang, Hanyang, and Hankow were the 3 little areas divided, but would collectively be known as Wuhan because it was in one relative area. And the Japanese had immediate success in it. They advanced, but it was a campaign that lasts for months, and it was ongoing by July of 1938. It was an entire offensive rather than one small battle. It was like at least 100,000 on each side fighting in the Wuhan area. And this was a big Japanese endeavor because they were trying to take the second Chinese capital, and even if the Chinese would not submit, it was a major important area to control, because it was dead in the center of China, or at least the important areas of China. And with the fall of Wuhan and Hubei, a lot of Chinese rail would be forced to go all the way around the western edges of Sichuan in order to communicate between the area north of Wuhan and the area south of Wuhan. So Wuhan was a strategically important area. But what was the importance of Wuhan to the Kwantung Army? Well, because the Japanese sent in so many forces to Wuhan, they had to reduce the amount of forces in the Manchurian border. So they actually took away forces from the Kwantung Army in order to put them in the fighting zone in China, specifically because of the Wuhan offensive. And I think that's where I can start to discuss some of the actual leading up events in the Changkufeng area that directly led to the Battle of Changkufeng, as we now call it in modern historiography of the topic. Now, Changkufeng, this is also known as the Battle of Lake Khasan. That's what the Soviets call it. The Japanese call it the Battle of Changkufeng. And there's some important events that happened before it. For example, there was a Soviet NKVD commander that fled the Great Purge. And keep in mind, the Great Purge was a giant campaign that wiped out a majority of Soviet commanders, including a far number, at least 80% of high-ranking commanders in the Far East. Absolutely devastating for Red Army Command between 1937 and 1939. So this was ongoing during this time. But then one of the NKVD officers named General Sokolov, they crossed the border. He crossed the border into Japan seeking refuge, and he told the Japanese all these crucial information about the Soviet command, including private conversations with people like Stalin, that were made, Stalin and Zhukov and all these important figures for Japan. So that was absolutely helpful for Japan. But after that, there was no major incidents. And since the battle at Kanchatsu Island that happened about exactly a year before, there had been no real border clashes between the Soviets and Japanese. No major border clashes. There might be an officer stealing a fisherman's caught fish or two, but other than that, there were no serious bloody interactions between the two countries for an entire year. And that would change in July 1938. So the Soviets occupied Changkufeng, which is a hill located in that tri-point area. And the Japanese believed that this was a part of Korea, and the Soviets disagreed. The Soviets believed that this was actually a part of the Soviet Union. So when the Japanese diplomatically asked the Soviets to kindly withdraw from Changkufeng, the Soviets declined because they believed that it was theirs, that Changkufeng was a part of Soviet Union. They had full right to have a military presence in that area. That's part of the disagreement that leads to the actual battle. But first, the Japanese and the Soviets were both very cautious about it. Previously, the Japanese had been more aggressive, and it had worked. The Soviets had been more relaxed, and they appeased the Japanese for the most part. But here, the Soviets were not playing around. They wanted Changkufeng. They believed it was theirs, and they refused to withdraw from the land. And the Japanese ambassador and the Soviet foreign minister continued to discuss this for a long time, and still the Soviets would not withdraw. So the Kwantung army and the Chosen army had to develop a plan for what to do with this. Well, the Kwantung army was not in the actual command area, but they were close enough. And the Kwantung army stated that this was a flagrant violation of Japan, and that the Japanese army, the IJA, had to respond in some way that would push the Soviets out of Changkufeng. Now that's the Kwantung army, and remember, the Kwantung army command, pretty much all of it, is very pro-war. They really want to attack. They're very belligerent. And then a slight opposition to that was the Chosen Army command. The Chosen Army was commanded by General Koiso, and General Koiso was much more neutral. He didn't want to surrender to the Soviets, but he certainly did not want to create a giant international incident and escalate this issue in Changkufeng further. So he was not in favor for directly attacking the Soviets in Changkufeng. So there was this disagreement between Kwantung Army and Chosen Army Command. Um, but this was not only limited to those two armies. Generally, the IJA tended to be much more aggressive in these regards, but it appeared that it was pretty much only Kwantung Army and this other group of young officers in the IJA in the actual headquarters in Tokyo. And the leader of this group of younger officers was Colonel Inada. And Colonel Inada was strongly opposed to appeasing the Soviets, as he would believe. And he wanted the Japanese army to directly intervene and take back Changkufeng. That was in the spirit of fighting hard and not letting down the dignity of the Japanese army. So that was Inada's thought, and this was almost the same as what the Kwantung Army believed. They wanted a show of strength and to show that the Soviets that they could not underestimate Japan, and perhaps not doing so would lead to increased Soviet aggression in other border areas. So there was this clash, and the general IJ, or the general Imperial General Headquarters, was not in favor, actually, of attacking Changkufeng head on, surprisingly enough. And it really was only that younger group led by Inada and the Kwantung Army that was for it, and the Chosen Army was strongly against it. However, the Chosen Army was undergoing a change in command. It was pre-planned. It wasn't sudden. The IG HQ wanted General Nakamura to replace General Inoue as a part of regular command change basis. So Nakamura was supposed to be taking command of this. And meanwhile, there would still continue to be diplomatic negotiations between the Japanese ambassador and Litvinov regarding Changkufeng, but so the Soviets would never agree to withdraw from the area. And they were almost waiting for something to happen. But now, with Nakamura, same last name as famous chess player Hikaru Nakamura, but his last name Nakamura was in command of Chosen Army, and eventually the army gave him a little briefing about what his role was. So his paper was as he was in charge of the entire armed forces in charge of Korea. He had to focus on the entire peninsula. But for that one incident going on with the 19th Infantry Division, Nakamura was not allowed to directly attack the Soviets, but he was allowed to he was allowed to take a defensive position and maintain some sort of position against the Soviets on the other side in Changkufeng. And eventually the Japanese army they eventually decided to give in to the younger Japanese's wants, of the younger officers like Inada. And so the Japanese army minister uh, decided that it was time to attack Changkufeng. So he gave Nakamura the permission to launch an attack, and Nakamura thus allowed Suetaka, and Suetaka was the commander of 19th Infantry Division that is actually in this area. So Suetaka, who's really adamantly pro-conflict, he wants conflict just like the Kwantung army. He gets what he wants, and he makes the decision to attack, and that attack was supposed to be launched on July 21st of 1938. However, it will be stopped by one important event, and that is the day before, July 20th, the army war minister, or the army minister named Itagaki, decided to attempt to attain permission from Emperor Hirohito. And first, he informally asked the emperor's opinion, and the emperor said no. The emperor unofficially declined and rejected the request for permission to attack the Soviets in this area. But Itagaki asked again, and what did Itagaki do? He demanded again. Demanded more like he peacefully asked the well-respected emperor for permission to attack. And keep in mind, this was a tradition that was supposed to occur, although they did not always do that. The Kwantung Army never asked the emperor for permission to attack in Mukden or in Marco Polo Bridge. But Itagaki wanted to ask, and he was even more blatantly rejected. In fact, Emperor Showa was more angry this time, and the emperor kind of blamed the army minister and believed the army minister was lying when he claimed that the navy minister and the foreign minister were also in support of this attack in Changkufeng. And the emperor would guess correctly, because neither the war minister nor the foreign minister were supportive of such an aggressive attack against the Soviets. So the army minister was distraught by this, and he was even contemplating resigning, although he did not. But what he did do was he insisted that, okay, at the very least, we need to obey the emperor's orders. So he canceled Suetaka's attack that was supposed to occur the following day. So Suetaka was unhappy, and Nakamura was okay. Nakamura said that, you have to obey the emperor's word. So that's what happened then. But afterwards, there were some continued further discussion, and eventually Suetaka asked Chosen Army Commander Nakamura if he could attack for purposes of non-belligerent or non-aggression on the 21st, the date the attack was supposed to happen, but did not. And Nakamura said no. And Suetaka asked again, though, and Nakamura also said no. So what could he do? Well, Suetaka decided, without permission, to occupy this other hill called Changkufeng. And Changkufeng was located a little bit northwest, I believe, of Changkufeng, and it was a much smaller, like, hilltop. And he occupied it, and made sure that none of his subordinate officers were allowed to inform Nakamura or any sort of higher command that he occupied this. But what happened was that Nakamura eventually found out, because someone had ratted on Sutaka, and Nakamura ordered him to completely withdraw. So Sutaka withdrew, but not completely. He left a couple battalions in Changchun-fen, because he wanted to keep an eye on the Soviets. He wanted to just have a little reconnaissance force. It pretty much was, in order to check out what the Soviets were doing. And what they saw really surprised them. So after Nakamura, helped by actual imperial orders from the emperor, and Sutaka heeded to it and withdrew, the Soviets were seen occupying this other hill, also close to Changkufeng, and it's called Changkufeng, and the Soviet 40th Rifle Division had occupied Changkufeng, and it was unclear to the Japanese whether this was a high command decision or a low command decision, like Sutaka's decisions had all been. But regardless, this was a great scapegoat to use, a great excuse that would allow Sutaka's master plan to finally attack. And remember, Sutaka was absolutely disappointed, dismally disappointed that he was not able to attack. He was bored and sick and tired of this peaceful position when he really wanted to be fighting in the war in China. He wanted the 19th Division to be in Wuhan right now, but he didn't. But he couldn't. He didn't want to be stuck in Korea, but he really enjoyed this opportunity, this golden opportunity that Chen Kufeng brought him. He was not going to waste it. So, to unleash his bloodthirst of attack, Sutaka ordered a light company to absolutely decimate and kill all 10 Soviet soldiers that were in Changkufeng, and Sutaka announced this to Chosen Army headquarters, and Nakamura's reaction to the so-called Changkufeng incident was that, okay, this is a different incident. That's what he was told, that it was a completely different incident, nothing to do with Changkufeng at all. And then Nakamura initially didn't allow 19th Division to attack, but eventually, after much prodding, Sutaka was able to convince Nakamura to give him permission for 19th Infantry Division to make very small, importantly, very, very small scale attacks against that one hill, Changkufeng. And it was a very important and very explicitly said that the attack must be limited to Changkufeng Hill and not expanded to the much broader area of Changkufeng. And well, what would you have done if you were Sutaka? Well, Sutaka took advantage of this as a green light to launch an actual attack, not just against Changkufeng, but against Changkufeng and Changkufeng. So that's what he did. Sutaka attacked using he wanted to attack using his most trusted subordinate general or Colonel Satao, and General Sato, and General Sato was in command of the 75th Infantry Regiment, and the 75th Infantry Regiment was supposed to attack that entire area. In fact, only one mere company of that entire regiment, the 75th Infantry Regiment, was focused on Changkufeng. The rest of that whole regiment, of 3 battalions, each of 3 companies, over 8/9 of that division, nearly 90% of that division, was focused on Changkufeng. So, that's right. General Sutaka explicitly disobeyed the orders of Chosen Army's headquarters and the word of Nakamura. But that was the plan, and yeah. Next time, I suppose we'll see how Sutaka's attack on Changkufeng, large-scale attack, small considering it's only a regiment, but larger than it's supposed to be, how this attack would happen and how it would eventually escalate. So, thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next video on this series on all of the border clashes leading up to the Nomonhan Incident of July 1939. Thank you very much.